What is up, folks? Ethan Hammond here. Wanted to share with you guys what I consider to be the most important and impactful experiment that's been going on in my life. Now, I've been working along the lines of manual therapy for a little over a decade now. So I started off in uni when I was studying physical therapy and athletic training, and I always wanted to be on the side of, hey, we have athletic injuries going on. Let's help the athletes recover from their injury so that they can get back to their training better and stronger than ever. Because it was always a case, this is something that I never liked. Whenever athletes would get injured, basically the entire protocol would be surrounded by resting, by icing the injury, and just being sedentary for ages, rather than how do we train around that injury so that we can heal faster? Because hey, when you exercise, you increase things like testosterone, human growth hormone, nerve growth factor, so that you can adapt and make changes to your body, right? So if I'm decreasing the levels of those hormones, my body doesn't heal as well. Because healing, rehabbing, recovering from injury, it's all the exact same thing. It's all short bursts of inflammation following a sort of stimulus that invokes a need to adapt, which is what exercise is. You adapt to it and you come back stronger, right? Or if you get injured, you have to break down the injured tissue, you replace it with new tissue. You have to be filtering the circulation through that all the time. And so what I start thinking about is, how do we, with the understanding that exercise breaks you down, exercise does not make you stronger, that's like the central idea surrounding this. Exercise does not make you stronger. It's the recovery that makes you stronger. So how do we enhance an athlete via enhancing their recovery as much as possible? What are the factors, the different facets of recovery that make it as good as possible? And one is that we definitely don't want to be sedentary, but there's always context with that, right? We want to be as relaxed as possible during the downtime, because while we don't want to be sedentary necessarily or excessively, we have to understand the magnitude of that. Being sedentary for 6 total weeks straight, where there's no physical activity whatsoever in that time, I'm going to say that's probably going to be pretty horrendous for your recovery. Remember, this is always in the context of we're trying to improve athletic prowess around an injury. You are an athlete, you want to be a stronger athlete, but you're injured, or maybe you've been previously injured and you don't want to get injured again. How do we work around that state? Okay, so exercise does not make you stronger. Exercise makes you weaker. It's the recovery that makes you stronger. How do we enhance recovery as well as possible? So we want to still be able to do stuff during the recovery period. We still need to be able to exercise, but exercise in such a way that the exercise actually promotes further rehabilitation. Imagine that. Imagine having strength training of such grandiose quality, such grand quality that it actually boosts your ability to heal, and you heal faster rather than slower. That's pretty amazing. And we can get people healing so much faster. So as I've been working along the lines of manual therapy, working with athletes, working with CrossFitters, working with weightlifters, with martial artists, a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners, and a lot of boxers, how do we enhance their ability to recover? So I wanted to share with you guys, this is basically the full plan. This is pretty much, without getting too specific into like individual drills, because that's just a long list, how do we, broadly speaking, enhance people's ability to recover and to heal, right? So basically what we're looking at, folks, which way is going to be better for this video? Probably this way. It's not a long list. But it's going to be a fairly long video because I want to get into the details of the categories of this. But one is that we have to learn the term parasympathetic. Parasympathy is so incredibly, gargantuanly important. Parasympathetic, you have two terms, sympathetic, parasympathetic. These are often listed as two different sides of the nervous system, depending on the specific scope that you're looking through at the nervous system. When you have a stress response, so when you're exercising or when you get into a fight, you have an adrenaline dump, right? Adrenaline is your primary stress hormone, not cortisol. Cortisol actually works to balance adrenaline. And so I believe that it's a misnomer to say that cortisol is a stress hormone. It is a stress balancing hormone, because if you look at it as its own individual function, it actually does a lot of the opposite functions as adrenaline. So for example, adrenaline will work to constrict your blood vessels. Cortisol will help to relax your blood vessels. And so they work together to balance each other out so that the magnitude of the stress response in terms of your physiology matches what the actual stressor is. So for example, if you are electing to go into a moderate exercise or a moderate workout routine, you're going to have a bit of a stress response. If you're about to get into a fight with a grizzly bear and you're fearing for your life now, it's the exact same chemistry. Nothing's fundamentally different, but it's a much greater magnitude of stress hormone release. That makes sense, right? We can get that. And we can understand like an appropriate amount of stress that you feel and like having butterflies in your stomach and whatever, versus when it's really intense, and the more intense it gets, the more it shuts you down. Okay? So we want as much as possible for our lifestyle to be parasympathetic. What does that mean? When we're having that stress response, we call that having a sympathetic response. It's just a physiological term for you are stressed. That's sympathetic. Whereas when we're parasympathetic, it doesn't literally mean the opposite, but it colloquially means the opposite of sympathetic. So instead of having a stress response, you're having a relaxed response. You're intentionally getting your body to down-regulate, as we say. So this could be things like you are doing some breath work exercises, helping to reduce your heart rate or lower your heart rate, working on reducing your ventilation, so your rate of breathing. So instead of when you're stressed out, when you're working out, when you're in a fight for your life, versus going slow, calm, nasal, relaxed, full breaths, okay? You could have a meditation thing going on. You can be outside, bare feet in the grass, out in nature, out in a forest, hug a tree. Things like that will help you to relax. And we all need some sort of routine where we're intentionally getting our bodies to relax. And we'll come into that more a little bit later on. But this is what we want our lifestyle to be, right? Our life needs to be parasympathetic. The only time you should be sympathetic, ideally, is when you're going through an intentional stressor, meaning you mean for it to happen, such as exercise. Okay? During exercise, you're going to be sympathetic. As soon as the exercise is done, it is then your job to become as parasympathetic as possible. So how do we specifically want to do that? Heart rate needs to come down. This is the easiest thing to do that. Ventilation needs to come down. If you get your heart rate and ventilation under control, everything else will follow, typically. You can't really have a strong dominant sympathetic system, a stressed out system with a low heart rate. There is context. Like you can have a controlled sympathetic stress response where you still maintain a low heart rate. Think of it like a experienced MMA fighter about to go into a ring, and he's like really experienced, really knows what he's doing. His heart rate is going to be much lower, even though he might be getting into a more stressful fight than, say, an amateur who's going to go into a very pathetic fight, but his heart rate's going to be skyrocketing, just as an example. And this isn't necessarily black and white. But if we get our breathing and our heart rate under control, we reduce the sympathetic response. And this may take time. It may happen over the course of a few minutes. It may be a few hours, maybe a few days, depending on you, your trauma, your experience, what's going on. So our lifestyle needs to be like this. Now, if we are going through an injury, so you just strained a hamstring, you just tweaked your lower back, you just dislocated a shoulder, and we're having to recover off of that. That is your stressor. We're trying to come off of that as stress and get our body as parasympathetic as possible. Why? Because when we're parasympathetic, we heal. When we're sympathetic, we do not heal. Your body does not focus on healing when you're actively in that exercise, actively in that fight. So what does that mean? That means that your immune system is down-regulated during stress. That means when we're parasympathetic, our immune system, which kind of wholly encompasses everything to do with inflammation and repairing the tissues, when we are parasympathetic, our immune system up-regulates to a degree. We, of course, don't want that to be excessive, but that goes without saying. We don't need to get into that silly conversation. We always want this to be within specific parameters that should be controlled by your body at all times, because you don't have to micromanage your health, but sometimes we have to micromanage aspects of our health to get us back to normal. Okay, so we want to be as relaxed as possible in our day-to-day life. If we are stressed out all the time, all day long, healing doesn't happen, or does not happen anywhere near as well as it should be. It's like when you, for example, I had my wisdom teeth taken out when I was like, 25 or something. And I was given like 2 weeks worth of pain pills to take because, I had 5 teeth total. I have 5 wisdom teeth. Well, it was actually 4 wisdom teeth, and I had what they called a supernumerary tooth, which is just like a calcium deposit that was back there as well, taking up space. Quite possibly part of why it was really painful, and I had chronic headaches and chronic jaw pain for a while. Anyways, I didn't take any pain pills. I was given 2 weeks worth because apparently people tend to have pain for about 2 weeks. I had pain for like 12 hours. I did not sleep that night because it hurt so much, but I did not take a single pain pill. And by morning, I was fine. I could move my jaw around just fine. I started to be able, given I had holes in my gums, but I started to be able to eat without like pain. I had sushi really soon after that. That was a mistake. I had rice stuck in those holes. Anyways, but you get the idea. If I'm doing something that blocks out the pain, my body doesn't know that there's a problem, so there's nothing to heal. And I want to avoid that. Embrace the pain within reason. I will take pain pills if it's going to hinder me from, doing my job. So if I have a splitting headache and I'm about to go do some work on a client, or if I have to be focused on one-on-one on taking care of my baby daughter, I'm going to take some pain pills just to help with that. So it's always context dependent. We have to understand that, guys. All right, number 2. So very first thing is that we need to work on being parasympathetic. And we go over things like that in my content on YouTube. You can also just go to YouTube and type in like drills for relaxation. They're all accomplishing the same thing. Find something that you like. I talk mostly about doing breath work and sitting down and just relaxing with your eyes shut. So doing a form of meditation. Number 2 is that we have to clean up circulation. And we do this via lymphatic massage. So your heart rate, your blood flow is, your oxygen and nutrient delivery is automatic. And it's enhanced when you're parasympathetic. But you can be as parasympathetic as possible without being passed out, without being unconscious, because that is what happens when you're extremely parasympathetic. You go unconscious. With lymphatic work, you can be as parasympathetic as is appropriate. If your lymphatics are still gunked up, you still won't heal as well. So we consider this to be another very foundational aspect of healing, recovering, rehabbing, and being able to sleep better. So lymphatics, your lymph system, lymph is derived from, I believe, the Greek for water. And this refers to your blood plasma that is returning to your heart. So you have your heart, it automatically works, it automatically pumps out oxygenated and nutrienated, is that a word? Blood out into your body, right? That happens automatically, happens whether you want it to or not. Even if you're sedentary, your heart is still pumping no matter what. But that blood flow has to come back through. Now, typically people are familiar with, you have arteries that go out and then you have veins that come in. That's only 2/3 of it. You also have your lymph vessels, and your lymph system is actually bigger than your entire cardiovascular system. So where the average adult human male has around, depending massively on your total size, 5 liters of blood, that same individual will have somewhere around 15 liters of lymph. This is your blood plasma as it's returning to your heart. Why is this a big deal? After metabolism has happened in your blood, you have metabolites, so the byproducts of metabolism. And this can include like damaged tissues. So remember, in this context, we are recovering from an injury. So you have damaged tissues, that stuff needs to be processed. You might have some bacteria, viruses, pathogens, fungus, mold, whatever, heavy metals, things that cause illness. Some of that stuff may be in your environment, in your food, you consume that needs to get processed. So this stuff gets processed through your lymphatic system. This is largely where your immune system is. Your immune system is in your lymph system and in your guts. So everyone's familiar with like lymph nodes up underneath your jaw. You can usually feel them, like up underneath your jawbone. They're these small little balls. They're like little grapes up underneath your jaw. Those are lymph nodes. Your tonsils are lymph nodes, which is why it's insane to get your tonsils removed. If you have tonsillitis, learn to do lymphatic massage. This is easy, like insanely, stupidly easy to do on yourself, on others. It takes 5 minutes to do the whole body. If you want to do a thorough lymphatic massage, it's going to be more like 45 minutes, but to get the base fundamentals done, it takes about 5 minutes, especially if you use a massage gun. Massage gun works great on this as long as you understand that you need to be super duper gentle. Always be gentle, because if you create pain when you're doing this, the lymphatic vessels will actually clench because they are innervated with sympathetic nerves. And so under stress, they activate, they clench, and that helps to boost your blood pressure. That's what adrenaline does. Here's the pen. Right, so you have a lot of lymph, you have a lot of blood plasma. So your lymphatic system shuttles, it funnels your lymph, your blood plasma, your used blood plasma, plus all the other big stuff in your blood through the lymph nodes. That gets filtered through via your immune system. That's where your white blood cells will come in, quite literally eat everything that gets up in there. Your lymph nodes, though, if you imagine a big ball and you just have a small vessel running through the center of the ball, stuff can get thrown out into the sides here. Things can coagulate up in there. Things can get stuck and stagnated. Imagine varicose veins. Many people will be familiar with varicose veins. If you're not, Google it. Varicose, V-A-R-I-C-O-S-E, veins. It's where your veins and your lymph vessels, they don't have an automatic pump, technically. Okay? They actually have these little valves inside them periodically that help to reduce or prevent backflow so that all the blood plasma and the red blood cells in your veins is shuttling through in one direction. However, when you don't have enough pressure in the system, it will absolutely backflow, stagnate, stretch out the vessels to the point that the valves are now worthless and damaged. Now they can't do their job. Now you get chronic swelling in the area. Now you have stuff that's supposed to be getting filtered out by your immune system that your immune system can no longer get to. Hello, chronic inflammation. Hello, chronic swelling. Hello, chronic pain. That pain pills don't really do anything for. That classical physiotherapy doesn't do anything for, because they only address the pain by and large. Okay? If I do a lymphatic massage, what does this mean? You have about 6 parts in your body. So Dr. Perry Nicholson copyrighted the term the Big Six. I give him full credit for all of this, of course. Like, dude's amazing. If you don't follow Dr. Perry Nicholson, follow him. He specifically goes into the lymphatic system. Like, that's his thing, that's his jam, and he's absolutely brilliant. So you have about 6 major areas across your body filled with the largest lymph nodes. You just massage them, and it massively improves your blood pressure and your blood flow, your circulation, your ability to heal, your ability to get oxygen and nutrients out to your body within minutes. And it is that powerful. So this is literally your collarbones, which is like the last part before your heart. So your lymph vessels actually empty out into your jugulars, your jugular veins in your neck. They empty out into them, and that goes directly to your heart. And it gets funneled back into your total blood flow to be pumped back out. It's a really cool system. Where are these lymph nodes? Collarbones, neck and jaw, your armpits, and like underneath your bicep and into the rib cage a bit. So like this whole axilla or axillary region. Your abdomen, that's where the biggest ones are. Your groin, like your hip crease, groin, and inner thigh, and in the back of the knee. Why in the back of the knee? Because that's where your calves are. Your calves, well, let me back up. How does your lymphatic system actually flow? Same thing with your veins, through muscular massage and through pressure created by breathing. Every single time I breathe in, I am increasing the amount of pressure in my body, in my whole body, not just my abdomen, because things have to move. Pressure drives fluid flow. Okay, so if I'm driving a lot of fluid flow, all of this stuff is moving. What happens when you're really sedentary, when you're stuck at a desk all the time and you're really stressed out? You tend to be hunched over, so now your lungs cannot expand very far. They don't really go past your chest much. So now your breathing is very shallow. You don't get much pressure in your body. Now things don't really flow very well. Now you have circulatory issues, which translates as you have chronic joint pain, chronic muscle pain, anywhere in the body. You can have an obstruction in your collarbone where you feel that. It could be literally anywhere in your body. It can be in your head. It can be behind your belly button. It could be in your groin. It could be in your asshole. It could be in your foot. One of them, presuming that you have 2 feet. It can happen anywhere. So we work on the whole body in this way, and it's super fast and easy to do. So all you do across those 6 areas, about 20, 30 seconds, you just very, very gently massage them out. And I always recommend doing it in order, like start with the collarbones and then branch out because of hydrodynamics. So if my collarbones are congested, I can do everything else. This stuff's still congested. This is the last point before the heart, so everything else is still gonna have reduced flow. Does that make sense going through that area? Okay, so lymphatic system, 20 to 30 seconds massage. We're gonna have more content coming up on how to do this specifically, as well as some other parts of the body like your eyes and ears. So 20 to 30 seconds gentle massage. There should be no pain whatsoever. I forgot to go back to the calves, didn't I? All right, calves. When I walk, I pump my calves. Your feet and your calves are the last point of your circulation. That's the furthest part away from your heart that your body gets in most circumstances. So, making sure my mic's still on because I can't see it on the phone part of the mic. Anyways, so when my calves are moving up and down, they're actually pumping your venous and lymph fluid through. So if you never walk, well, maybe that's why going out for a walk is so incredibly healthy for you. Possibly even more healthy than going out for a run, because you're pumping fluid through. And if you run really poorly and you're not using your ankle range of motion, that's not a great thing. And then we have a load of issues. Anyways, heel striking is a big no-no in running. If you have an issue with me saying that, you don't understand running. I need to say that to more people. So as I'm going through walking, I can even be here just like pumping my heels up and down to pump my calves. That's going to drive this fluid up. Because think about it, any fluid below your heart has to work against gravity to get up. Your calves are meant to be that pump. They're basically like the heart for your lower body. But if you have extraordinarily tight ankles, which you probably do, almost everyone does, that's one of the most important things we have to rehab in people is the chronic ankle injuries and chronically tight and stiff ankles. If I have reduced ankle range of motion, I have reduced range of motion for my calves. And so I've reduced pressure and pumping for my lymphatic system. Maybe this is why your feet are so prone to getting swollen in your knees. Okay? But that's why the lymph nodes, part of the reason why, are in the back of the knee. So it kind of comes around to the inside through the inner thigh, up the groin, and then basically all of your lymph vessels and nodes are in the front half of the body because that's where the organs kind of drain out of. You don't really have that in the back. You do have lymph nodes, though, running up your spine. Not totally important. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Now, how else? Well, actually, these are the two most important things I consider. So if I was like really pressed for time or I didn't really have any tools, this is the stuff you can do anytime, any place. All you need are your hands and a nice quiet spot. Do some breathing exercises with your eyes closed. Relax. Do that periodically. You can do a lymph massage with your hands. Super duper easy. I do prefer a massage gun though. Now, number 3 is mobility work. This is the stuff that people think I'm known for, but it's actually more all of this. So mobility work. What does mobility mean? Mobility, just as a word by itself, refers to your ability to move. If you can move, you're mobile. If you can't move, you have reduced or no mobility. Mobility, however, in the context of athletics, means your ability to move with strength through range of motion. That'll be ROM, range of motion, okay? So it's not just enough that I can stretch out a joint as far as possible. That's flexibility. Flexibility means that I can reach over and touch my toes. Cool. That's pointless. But good on you for being able to do that. I can do that. I can hug my knees. It's pointless. It doesn't actually show or demonstrate anything at all. Show me that you can deadlift with an absolutely solid back that maximizes your strength and allows you to pick up as much weight as possible for you at that given time over and over and over again in such a way that you will never harm yourself inherently from the deadlifting. Because deadlifting, exercising, movement is not bad for you. Human beings were built to move. That's the difference between flexibility and mobility. So mobility drills. What are mobility drills? Mobility drills are ones that allow you to move with more strength, with more range of motion. So this is like your foam rolling. Foam rolling is extraordinarily important and is extraordinarily powerful if you know how to use it and use it right. There are physiotherapists out there saying that foam rolling is basically worthless, that it has short-term results, but it doesn't actually change anything long-term. And they sound extraordinarily ignorant and arrogant talking about this, and I'll explain why. When I do something like foam roll, I'm increasing the circulation in an area. I'm bringing nervous attention to it. I'm helping it to relax as long as I use it in a slow, gentle, painless way. And we will get people time and time again. You go through 2-3 minutes of foam rolling in a specific area, you have more range of motion in that area. And then they just leave it at that and they think, okay, 30 minutes later, you are back to baseline range of motion. So it's worthless. Okay, so you did a workout and you weren't actually stronger 30 minutes later, so the exercise was worthless, don't do exercise. You see how stupid that conversation is? It's incredibly stupid and arrogant. Physiotherapists saying things like that disempowers people. Absolute jackasses. What you do is that you have to identify what kind of position are you restricted in. So let's say that I've hurt my knee or I've strained my hamstring. Now my ability to squat is impaired. That is a full range position. An ass to grass squat is a full range position, right? So what I can do is analyze. I try to go into my squat with the most golden standards as possible. So straight feet, knees out, lead with your hips, go as low as you possibly can, and you can only go like 1/4 of the way down. It's hurting too much. Your knee is super swollen. So what we do is the foam rolling, for example, just because that's the only one we've listed so far. And now you go back into your squat and things feel better. You have like 10 inches more range of motion. Now you can practice squatting with better range, better strength. You can do strength work now on your squat. That foam rolling is hella powerful now. But if you just leave it as, just this one isolated drill that doesn't connect to anything else, then yeah, it's worthless. And so is your therapist promoting work like that. It's absolutely a waste of time. Don't do crap like that. If you're a physio and you're listening to this, I hope you're offended or inspired. You should be inspired, but also be offended if you've done that to people. It's wasting their time. As in telling them, hey, don't foam roll because it's a waste of time. You're a waste of time. Anyways, enough of this. That's silly. Banded distractions. Banded distractions are fun because people are like, it doesn't feel like anything's happening. And then we go through like 3, 4, 5 minutes of work on this and like, I'm bored now. People have such issues with being bored. Let yourself be bored. Being bored is great. It's very relaxing. See, point number 1, being parasympathetic. Let yourself be bored. You don't have to be constantly stimulated and sympathetic all the time. Get parasympathetic. Go out into the woods and hug a tree. Banded distraction means I'm going to use a band to pull on my joint. So if I have a band anchored to like a squat rig that's mounted down and I have it wrapped around my wrist and I step back and I'm letting my arm and shoulder relax, and now it's pulling on my shoulder joint and actually opening up the shoulder joint. Now I increase synovial fluid, joint fluid in there so it can get better nutrition. Now the cartilage can heal much more effectively and have a lot more range of motion so I can be a lot stronger. It's cool. Voodoo flossing is absolutely amazing. I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole video. Well, all of this is a whole video by itself. Voodoo flossing is amazing. Google it. Only get the rolls from Rogue Fitness. All other companies are worthless. Contract, relax. These are the main category of drills. There's lots of other things, but this is the main stuff that we do in my practice because we consider them to be the most powerful. And there's case-by-case scenarios where we maybe do other things, but foam rolling, banded distractions, voodoo flossing, contract, relax. Contract, relax is super, super powerful. So say I have really tight shoulders and I can only take my arm like this far back, whereas I want to be able to take it parallel to the floor. And I can only go like this. So what I can do is like grab a table like what I have here, and I'm trying to stretch out the front of my chest and shoulder so I can actually push down at this range. So I go to my end range and I'm trying to activate those tissues that are really tight for like 10 seconds while I breathe nice and slow and relaxed. At the end of the 10 seconds, I take a big deep breath in. I'm still pushing. And then I relax. And I try to stretch my arm out a little bit further. And what tends to happen, I can do this for pretty much any muscle or position, what tends to happen is that things relax because a lot of this is neurological tension or neural tension, which means you're not technically tight. It's just your brain, your nervous system, your central nervous system is actively creating tension in order to keep things tight, in order to keep you safe so that you have less chance of re-injuring yourself. In the short term at least. Long term, things tend to get gnarly because you're not supposed to stay stiff and tight and stressed all the time. That is a short term thing. Okay, so I contract, relax. I get neural tension going on. I can use contract, relax. Sorry, I said that weird. You can use contract, relax to undo that neural tension. It works incredibly fast when that is your problem. Okay, so those are your main mobility drills. So you apply those. And I have a whole list of just like the short drills, like 20 to 50 seconds long per video on my YouTube. And it's just a long list of drills for all of this. Not so much for the contract, relax stuff, but foam rolling, banded distractions, voodoo floss, all that good stuff. Now, fourth part. This is how we exercise when we're injured, we use variable resistance training. Variable resistance. I'm not going to do any demonstrations with this because we got a lot of video content coming on this stuff because this is powerful. And sometimes it's very hard for people to understand that using bands, using elastic bands, can, if you use it correctly, drive significantly more stress and force on your muscles than free weights ever can. So for example, I can lift a band that starts off at, let's say, 5 kilos of tension, but by the time I bicep curl it up to the top range, it's like 50 kilos worth of tension. I cannot bicep curl 50 kilos. I can at most bicep curl maybe 30 kilos at the very most. I can definitely do 25 kilos. So what I can do is, let's say, we like to understand this through foot pounds. So let's say that I'm going to be bicep curling. Let's just say my range of motion is 1 foot. Okay? I've got a 40 kilo barbell in my hands. So 1 barbell, I'm lifting that. So every single rep I do, that's 40 foot-pounds of work. Okay? Let's say I can do at most 15 reps, and it's all through that full range. So I did, 400 foot-pounds. That's 15. So 600 foot-pounds of work. Does that make sense? If you don't know what foot-pounds is. I moved at 1 foot. It was 40 kilos. So technically this would be foot kilos. So each rep I do is 40 foot kilos of work. If the band, because when I'm injured, now we're going to apply this to an elbow injury just for the sake of this example, plus you can see me so it's easier. When I'm outstretched, this is where I'm weakest, if I can even get outstretched. So I've got an elbow injury. I want to use the mobility work, the lymphatic work, the parasympathetic work to allow me to move my elbow as much as possible, and now I can subject it to variable resistance training. So I've done the work to decrease the pain and increase the range of motion through my elbow, okay? So instead of being like casted and being able to move like this, now I can move it like this. Now I'm going to do variable resistance training without, I'm going to say never, locking out joints. The relevant joints, of course. So I will not lock out my elbow. Why? Because that's where I'm weakest. That's where my joint is going to disengage the muscle, and we're going to be applying stress to the joint. The big problem with weightlifting is that people try to get into weightlifting to heal their joint pain, but they end up just making things worse. Why? Because weightlifting is a horrible stimulus for your muscles. Weightlifting has a tendency to overload the joints and underload the muscles. And when you're doing a lot of weightlifting training, you tend to fatigue and give out, not because your muscles are actually hurting or fatigued, but because your joints are. Variable resistance training gets around that by appropriately loading the joints and overloading the muscles so that the muscles adapt rather than the joints getting damaged and weaker. So I want to stay within a reduced range of motion, and we'll talk in other videos talking about the optimal range of motion for the variable resistance drills, so like bicep curls, deadlifts, squats, whatever. But if I can apply that correctly, so I do the mobility work, now I can move my arm through a lot more range of motion, so now I can load it. But if I'm restricted to dumbbells, I'm restricted to the amount I can lift through this bottom range. If I have a band going, the band starts out weakest here, where I'm weakest, and I pull, now it's a little bit stronger. Well, I'm in a stronger position. My bicep is in a stronger position. It's at a stronger advantage for pulling weight. Now it's even stronger. Well, guess what? So is the band. Now I can subject my muscle to far more stress than a free weight ever could. Can't come close to what I can do. So that stimulates a lot more stress on the muscle. That stimulates a lot more exercise on your body, a lot more need to adapt. So things like testosterone, human growth hormone, they skyrocket. You heal a lot faster. You apply all 4 of these. Go parasympathetic, go lymphatic, or work your lymphatic system. Do the mobility work. Follow that directly by the variable resistance training. So using the X3 bar, which I'm a huge proponent of. I'm not a spokesperson for it. I just really, really like the system. It's amazing. We do that, we heal faster than ever. So if a physiotherapist tells you, hey, this is going to take you 6 months to recover from, it's like, it's just a hamstring strain or a quad strain. And then we also would go through more sport-specific stuff as you get into a safer and safer position to actually be able to withstand that. So that would be like number 5 on there, depending on what your goals actually are. But yeah, that's the whole project. If we can get people to enhance their parasympathetic state in their everyday life as much as possible, if we can get people to enhance their circulation as much as possible, which is working the lymphatic system, along with breathing really deeply and a whole bunch of other stuff, if we can do a daily mobility practice every single day and be working on tamping down on that pain effectively, not taking pain pills, but increasing your range of motion, increasing the circulation, increasing the ability for the muscles to really flow in terms of their fluids, that will manage pain automatically. And then if we can do the variable resistance training, which is extraordinarily safe and effective if done right on injured tissues. So even if you do injure your elbow, we can still work out your elbow and it's going to get stronger than it was before the injury. So we want to keep all that stuff going, and that's going to get you healing so much faster. So how do we capitalize on all of this? This is what this channel is all about.